woman staring back at her in the cracked mirror of the employee restroom bore no resemblance to Elena Krutsk, the once celebrated restaurateur featured in Food and Wine for her post-divorce comeback story. Just 2 weeks ago, she was the picture of polished success, tailored blazers, flawless red lipstick, and a confident smile that could silence even the most cynical food critic. But now she was a ghost of that woman. Cheap foundation poorly masked the exhaustion under her eyes, and the meticulously styled hair that once graced glossy magazine pages was yanked back into a limp ponytail held by a frayed scrunchie. The ill-fitting black uniform she'd picked up from a thrift store scratched against her skin like pennants. But the worst part wasn't the makeup or the uniform. It was the name tag clipped crookedly on her chest. Lena Martinez, close enough to her real name to respond instinctively, but far enough to hide in plain sight. She took a deep breath and whispered to the mirror, "You can do this." But deep down, she wasn't so sure. Just 3 months ago, Estrada Rata had been her golden crown, a 5-star jewel of a restaurant born from the ashes of her failed marriage. Everything about it had come from her heart, from the Mediterranean gold-hued walls she had personally chosen, to the refined dishes inspired by her grandmother's old-world recipes, reimagined for the modern palate. It wasn't just a business, it was her redemption. And then the complaints started. First they trickled in, a dissatisfied customer here, a bitter ex-employee there. Elena brushed them off as noise. In the restaurant industry, complaints were as common as spilled wine. But soon, patterns emerged. Stories echoed. Staff favoritism, missing tips, front-of-house humiliation. Some customers even claimed to witness employees being berated in full view of the dining room. The final blow came in the form of a scathing blog post, not about the food, which was still world-class, but about the atmosphere. According to the writer, dining at Estrada Rata felt like watching a slow, public breakdown behind the scenes. Elena tried to handle it the professional way. She sat down with Bryce Morrison, her general manager and someone she once trusted implicitly. He smiled, reassured her it was just growing pains, told her not to worry. Every surprise visit she made was met with eerie perfection. The staff unusually cheerful, operations seamless. That's when she knew. If she wanted the truth, she would have to disappear. Now, at 4:30 in the morning, Elena stood outside the back entrance of her own restaurant, stomach twisted in knots. She'd sent her 8-year-old daughter Sophia to stay with her sister for what she'd called a business trip. The lie burned in her throat. How could she possibly explain to her little girl that Mommy was about to become a spy in the very kingdom she had once ruled? The door creaked open. A thin young man stepped into view, paint under his fingernails, kind eyes that gave her a moment of peace. She recognized him from his application. Nico. She'd approved his hire but never met him face to face. "You must be Lena," he said, with a warm but weary smile. There was something in his voice, a joke dressed as a warning. "I really appreciate the opportunity," Elena said, forcing a smile as she followed him through the cluttered back hallway she once knew intimately. Now it felt like enemy territory. "Single mom," she added. "It's not easy finding work." Not a total lie, just not the full story. Inside her, a storm brewed. It wasn't fear of being exposed that twisted her gut. It was guilt. Not the guilt of deceiving her staff, but of realizing she may have deceived herself. Had she, in chasing acclaim and expansion, forgotten the people who made it all possible? The dishwashers, the line cooks, the servers, the quiet, often invisible workforce who once believed in her dream? Now, in disguise, and with her pride in tatters, she was about to step back into the very world she created, not as a queen, but as a nameless face in the crowd, to finally see whether her empire was truly built on gold, or on rotting wood painted to look like it. Even at the height of her success, Elena had never forgotten the bone-deep hunger of her early 20s, when Sophia was just a newborn and every day was a desperate negotiation for survival. She remembered boiling water for formula, skipping meals so her daughter could eat, and sitting in the dark because the electric bill hadn't been paid. And maybe that's why this disguise didn't feel like an act. It felt like slipping into an old skin, thin, weathered, and full of scars. She wasn't performing, she was returning. "Bryce mentioned you," Nico said, glancing around as if worried they'd be overheard. "Look, just be careful, okay? There are some folks around here who aren't what they seem." He hesitated, struggling to find words that wouldn't sound like slander. "Just don't give them a reason to come after you." Before Elena could ask who he meant, a voice pierced the quiet like a blade. "Nico, enough with the chatting, get the dining room set." A woman stormed toward them, platinum blonde hair styled within an inch of its life, layers of makeup so thick they cracked when she scowled. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at Elena. "And you must be the charity case." Elena's fists clenched before she could stop herself, but she kept her face neutral, no sudden moves. She recognized the woman instantly, Trina Walsh, the senior server who had somehow become Bryce's right hand after only 8 months. Her personnel file had been unimpressive, a short stint at a chain restaurant, no standout reviews. Yet here she was, swaggering like she owned the place. "I'm Lena," Elena replied evenly, extending a hand. Trina looked at it like it was contaminated. "Right. Listen up, Lena. This isn't some roadside diner where you can drag your feet and still walk out with tips. This is a real restaurant, real standards. You're starting with lunch shifts, the dead zone, and maybe, if you don't screw that up, we'll see about dinner service." Elena bit her tongue. She knew the truth. Lunch at Estrada Dorada wasn't dead. It was packed with corporate lunches, business meetings, and ladies who lunch regulars. Sometimes it rivaled dinner in revenue, but she nodded, staying in character. "I understand," she said softly. "Do you?" Trina stepped closer, a cloud of overpriced perfume hitting Elena like a slap, because the last 3 temps thought they understood too, and they all... Elena held her ground. "I won't need babysitting," she said, proud of how steady her voice sounded. Trina laughed, a sharp, cold sound. "We'll see." And in that moment, Elena Cruz, wearing cheap polyester and carrying a fake name, knew one thing for sure: the real shift had already begun. Elena pressed her lips together tightly. She knew exactly what the lunch shift at Estrada Dorada was really like, and it was nothing like the dead zone Trina had just described. In truth, lunch was a bustling affair. Corporate executives negotiating over charcuterie boards, socialites sipping sparkling water while gossiping over artisanal salads. Some days, it even outpaced the dinner rush. But Elena said nothing. Instead, she simply nodded. "I understand." "Do you?" Trina stepped in closer, her perfume hitting Elena's face like a warning shot, a sharp, overpriced floral scent that clashed with everything a server's salary could realistically afford. "Because the last 3 temps we had all quit in tears. I don't have time to babysit anyone." "I won't need babysitting," Elena said, her pride tightening her voice into something calm and composed, but beneath that was steel. Trina smirked, her laugh like glass breaking. "We'll see about that." Then she turned and shouted, "Bryce, your new little project is here." Little project. Elena mentally filed that phrase away like evidence. Moments later, Bryce Morrison stepped out of what had once been her office. At 35, Bryce had the kind of calculated good looks that worked well in investor meetings and Instagram photos. Clean-cut, well-tailored, smug. Elena had hired him herself. His resume had been perfect, almost too perfect. Now, Watching him scan her appearance with barely veiled disdain, Elena realized just how blind she'd been. "So, Lena, right?" he asked coolly, not offering his hand. "I guess times are tough, huh?" The casual cruelty of it struck like a blow to the chest, the way someone might speak to a person they believed was truly beneath them, a person too desperate to push back. "I'm grateful for the opportunity," Elena said, keeping her tone level. "Sure you are. Trina will show you the ropes. Just try not to embarrass us." He turned to leave, then paused mid-step. "Oh, and Lena, that uniform, it's a little baggy. You should probably get it tailored. Customers don't want to see sloppy." Elena looked down at the second-hand shirt she'd purchased for $5. It wasn't couture, but it was clean, pressed, and within code. She felt her face heat up. Trina smirked with smug satisfaction. Clearly, this was all part of the same cruel game. "I'll take care of it," Elena said softly. "Good girl," Bryce replied, dripping with condescension masked as politeness, like honey from a jar just starting to rot. As he turned and walked away, Elena caught Nico's eye across the kitchen. The young man offered a subtle, sympathetic look, the kind that said, "I see you." In that moment, Elena's stomach turned with a new, sharper ache. How many others had stood in this exact spot, had been spoken to this way, had swallowed their pride just to keep a paycheck? And worse, how many had she failed to protect? "Follow me," Trina snapped, already walking off. "I don't repeat myself." The next 4 hours were not training. They were psychological warfare disguised as onboarding. Elena was made to re-clean spotless tables, restock already perfectly stocked condiments, and memorize a wine list she had once personally curated, label by label. Every task came with a critique. Too slow, too fast, too cautious, not cautious enough. Trina found fault in how she held a tray, how she walked, even how she breathed. Elena didn't push back. She said nothing. She simply took out the small notepad she'd picked up at the dollar store and began jotting things down. Not wine pairings, not customer orders. No, these were notes on abuse, pettiness, humiliation. She was documenting everything. Every eye roll, every unnecessary correction, every moment Trina's mask slipped to reveal the venom underneath. Around them, other employees watched, some with pity, others with silent relief that they weren't the target this time. Elena recognized the behavior. In any toxic environment, as long as someone else is taking the blows, the rest learn to stay quiet and survive. By the time lunch rolled around, her feet were screaming in the cheap shoes, and her self-respect had been stripped down layer by layer. But amid the pain, Elena had discovered something critical. This wasn't just poor management. This wasn't a personality clash. This was a system, a cold, calculated machine designed to break down anyone who didn't conform to its rotten hierarchy. As she tied her apron in her own restaurant, Elena Cruz made a silent promise. "This ends, right here, right now, but first, I need to see how deep this rot really goes." Lunch service began, and Lena Martinez, the desperate new hire with a fake name and second-hand shoes, was ready to uncover the true face of Estra Dorada, the version that only existed when Elena Cruz wasn't watching. "Excuse me, miss," a gentle voice interrupted her focus. "We ordered the house red. I think this may be the wrong wine." Elena glanced at the bottle in her hands, then down at the table number Trina had given her. 12. She froze. Across the dining room she saw the real table 12, a young couple sharing appetizers, giggling at something on their phones. The woman in front of her, refined and elegant with pearls around her neck, was seated at table 10. A chill raced up Elena's spine. "I'm so sorry," she began, her throat tightening. But before she could explain, a voice lashed through the room like a whip. "What are you doing?" Trina stormed over, high heels cracking loudly on the hardwood floors that Elena herself had selected years ago. Every grain in those planks, every tile was chosen by her, and now they echoed with humiliation. You almost served a $300 0 cents bottle of wine to the wrong table? The dining room went silent. Forks paused mid-air. Conversations froze. Elena's face burned. I thought this was table 12. Trina didn't let her finish. What's wrong? This is exactly what I was talking about, she barked, her voice rising with performative outrage. You can't just guess in a place like this. Do you even know what that wine costs? Elena bit her tongue so hard she could taste copper. She knew exactly how much it cost. She had selected it, negotiated its price with the distributor, and paired it herself on the menu. And now she knew the truth. This wasn't a mistake. This was a setup. Trina had intentionally given her the wrong table number. Because the couple at table 12? They didn't look like the kind of guests who would order a high-end bottle of Bordeaux. This had been a trap, a deliberate attempt to humiliate her in front of customers and staff alike. I apologize, Elena whispered, feeling the sting of every pair of eyes locked onto her. You'll make sure, will you? Rice appeared suddenly, oozing faux professionalism. What seems to be the problem? Your new hire almost served premium wine to the wrong table, Trina answered, loudly enough for the entire left side of the dining room to hear. I've been trying to train her, she sighed dramatically, as if burdened by the task. Rice turned to the elegant woman at table 10. Ma'am, I'm terribly sorry for the confusion. Please allow us to offer dessert on the house as our apology. The woman shifted uncomfortably. But really not necessary. Everyone makes mistakes. Thank you for your understanding, Bryce said smoothly, then turned to Elena with a smile that looked like kindness but felt like poison. Elena, can we have a word in the back? The walk to the break room felt like a public trial, a gauntlet of eyes, judgment, and awkward silence. Some staff looked at her with pity. Others looked away. Once the doors shut behind them, Bryce dropped the act. What part of "don't embarrass us" did you not understand? Bryce's voice dropped to a lower register. Quiet, but laced with venom. That woman could have been anyone, Lena. A critic, a blogger, someone's mother-in-law who happens to be married to a city councilman, and you nearly tanked our reputation over a stupid mistake. Elena bit back the words forming at the edge of her tongue. You, or Trina, gave me the wrong table number, but the look in Bryce's eyes told her this wasn't about facts. This wasn't about the mistake. This was a power play, a loyalty test, an unspoken rule: stay in your place or be crushed. I'm sorry, she said evenly. It won't happen again. You're right, it won't. His eyes narrowed. Because you're off the floor. Go to the back. You're on prep duty now. He didn't have to say it out loud. The demotion was clear. He was sending her to the shadows. Out of sight, out of significance. When Trina takes the time to help you, he added, you should pay closer attention. Maybe next time, you'll learn some gratitude. And with that he turned and walked away. But before Elena could collect herself, Trina slipped in through the break room door, closing it behind her with a slow, calculated click, like she was sealing the room for an execution. You know what your problem is? Trina asked, leaning against the lockers with arms folded like a queen surveying the peasant who dared enter her court. You walk in here thinking this job is charity, like the world owes you something just because you're a poor, struggling, single mom. Elena clenched her fists. I never said that. You didn't have to, Trina replied, her eyes scanning Elena from head to toe like a predator sizing up an injured animal. It's written all over you. Those bargain bin shoes, that timid walk, the way you look like you're praying no one kicks you out. People look at you and they feel pity. She examined her manicured nails like she was bored now. then added with a smirk, "Here's a free piece of advice. This industry eats women like you alive. You're too old, too slow, too forgettable. You don't belong here." Each word was chosen like a weapon, aimed not at Elena's abilities, but at her worth. Elena didn't need confirmation. She'd seen this routine before. Trina had performed this monologue for others. She had sharpened it over time, turned it into an art form. Gaslighting as protocol, bullying as strategy. "Customers come here to feel special," Trina continued. "They want to be served by women who are fast, beautiful, and full of energy, not walking reminders of their own failures." Elena's phone buzzed quietly in her pocket. The recording app was still running. She'd turned it on that morning, a quiet act of self-defense. Now it might become her most valuable weapon. "I understand," Elena said, her voice soft, barely audible, not because she was weak, but because she knew if she spoke louder, her composure might shatter. "Do you?" Trina tilted her head. "Because the last 3 before you understood too. And you know what happened? They crumbled. They cried. They got angry. They blamed everyone but themselves." She straightened her uniform. Every movement a performance. "Bryce and I have worked too hard to build a name for this place. We're not going to let desperate women drag it down." Elena almost laughed. Build a name. This place? Trina hadn't built a damned thing. But Elena didn't say a word. She let the silence wrap around her like a cloak. Let Trina see what she wanted to see, a broken timp. Already halfway out the door. "Lovely chat," Trina said, patting her shoulder with sugar-coated malice. "Now get to the kitchen. Let the real servers do the work." Elena lingered a moment after Trina left, standing alone by the sink. She looked up at her reflection in the mirror. Lena Martinez stared back, the tired, invisible woman scraping by, grateful for scraps. But behind those eyes, Elena Cruz was awakening. Not angry. Strategic. She tied her apron tighter. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The kitchen was a different world. A symphony of clanging pans, sharp knives, steam hissing, and orders being shouted across the line. It was loud, hot, repetitive, prepping ingredients, chopping vegetables, assembling starters. Every motion familiar. These were ingredients she had hand-picked, local farms she had partnered with. The soul of her menu lived here, and it gave her something rare: time. And more importantly, perspective. Nico was still there, steady, focused. Occasionally their eyes would meet. His were kind, but alert, as if constantly checking, "Are you okay? Are you still standing?" During a lull, he came over. "What happened out there?" he began, voice low. "That wasn't cool." "You all right?" Elena nodded, slicing tomatoes with quiet precision. The kitchen noise dulled everything else, but in this small corner they carved out a sliver of privacy. "Is that kind of table mix-up common?" she asked, her voice even. Nico hesitated, then leaned in slightly, more than it should be, especially with new hires. He looked around, then lowered his voice further. "You've got to be careful. Trina and Bryce, they have their favorites. And the rest? They're just obstacles." "What do you mean?" "Tips, for one," he said, so softly it was almost a breath. "They're supposed to be pooled evenly, but Trina always ends up with the lion's share. Claims it's because she runs the VIP section. But she's the one who assigns those sections." Elena's jaw tightened. The tip pooling system was her idea, designed to create fairness. Now she realized it was being manipulated and weaponized. "And schedules too," Nico added. "If Bryce doesn't like someone, they get stuck with the worst shifts. Lunch only, or these weird split shifts that make it impossible to pick up second jobs." "When did this start?" Around 6 months after Bryce took over, Nico replied, right when Trina moved to the dinner shift, then suddenly became his shadow. Elena said nothing, but inside, a slow burn began. Because now the owner was here, and she was taking notes. "One more thing," Nico said, pulling out his phone. "You need to see this." Elena leaned in. What she saw on the screen made her blood freeze. A group chat, one she didn't know existed. Istra staff official. The messages made her stomach turn. "What's the new girl's name again? Lena something. Total charity case. Single mom, probably desperate. Let's bet how long she lasts. L. Trina. Before Monday for sure. These ones always cry and quit. Think this is some kind of McDonald's." Rice's resume was garbage. Probably only got hired because corporate pressured us. My guess, not even legal. Elena's hands trembled with rage. Racism, misogyny, open mockery of single mothers. A deliberate setup with the wine incident. Everything laid out. In writing, in black and white. No room for denial. And no more excuses. Elena Cruz wasn't a detached owner anymore. She was here. She had seen it. And she was going to end it. "I'm sorry," Nico said, lowering his gaze like he carried the shame for all of them. "I know that was hard to read, but I thought you deserved to know. What happened today, it wasn't your fault. They wanted you to mess up." Elena looked at the young man, someone who barely knew her but had risked his job to show her the truth. "Be willing me to tell me this?" she asked, her voice catching slightly. Nico paused for a moment, then said quietly, "Because I've seen too many good people get chewed up by this place." He swallowed hard. "My sister worked here last year. Single mom like you. They did the same thing to her. Set her up, broke her down, drove her out. She's at a diner now. Makes half the money, but at least she sleeps at night." Something inside Elena shifted. A puzzle piece, long missing, snapped into place. Maria Ramirez. She had left suddenly last fall. Elena had assumed it was personal, family issues, a move. But now she saw the truth. Another casualty of the culture she had blindly allowed to fester. "I won't let them break me," she said quietly, but the words carried weight. Like an oath. Nico gave a small bittersweet smile. It's what Maria said too. And then, without another word, he put his phone away. "We're trying to scare you off," Nico said softly. "You're already tougher than most people who walk through those doors. But if you want to survive here, you've got to know the rules. Keep your head down, don't give them a reason, and record everything. Record everything." If only he knew. Elena already had. The rest of that shift passed like walking through the aftermath of a storm. Everything the same on the surface, but nothing untouched. Elena moved through the kitchen with the eyes of someone newly awakened. She saw it all now. Trina manipulating floor assignments, always keeping the best tables for herself while pushing others into the least profitable zones. She saw Bryce disappear into the office to count tips for far longer than necessary. Emerging smug and satisfied, she noticed how the staff's eyes dropped the moment either of them entered a room, like prey instinctively lowering their heads when predators stalk too close. And through it all, Elena took mental notes, filed memories, timed glances. Every subtle cruelty, every moment of calculated abuse, she logged it. On her break, Elena stepped outside, heart pounding with adrenaline and a sense of emerging purpose. Her fingers hovered over her phone for a second before she made a call she never imagined making. "Marcus, it's Elena. I need a favor, urgent." Marcus Webb, celebrated food critic, arguably the most influential culinary voice in the city, and one of the few people Elena trusted with her truth. He'd been there during her restaurant's rise, praising her grandmother's recipes, and writing glowing reviews about the warmth of Estradada. "Elena, how's the place holding up?" She exhaled, eyes scanning the building that had once symbolized her triumph, now a place of rot she hadn't known existed. "That's exactly why I'm calling. I need you to come to Estradada, under a different name. Make a reservation for tomorrow night. Ask specifically to be seated in Section C." There was a beat of silence. "This sounds serious. What's going on?" "I need an unbiased view of our service." She paused, "and I need it quietly." There was no hesitation. "You got it. Tomorrow night, prime dinner hour. I won't say a word." As she hung up, Elena felt something stir inside her, a flicker of power. Nico had shown her the hidden rot. Now it was time to test how far the infection had spread, and how bold they'd become when they thought no one was watching. Back inside, she caught sight of Bryce and Trina laughing quietly near the host stand, their heads bent close in a shared, smug secret. Whatever they were plotting, they looked too relaxed. Elena didn't say a word. She just watched. Tomorrow would be the reckoning. Saturday evening arrived like the calm before a violent storm. Elena hadn't slept. She'd relived every moment of the previous day in her mind, refining her strategy. Marcus would arrive at exactly 7:30. He'd be seated at table C7, a table under Trina's domain. Elena arrived early, hopeful she might assist on the floor, but before she could even take a step toward the dining room, Bryce intercepted her with a fake smile and cold eyes. "Change of plans, Lena," he said smoothly. "We're short in the dish pit. You're needed downstairs." She blinked. "I thought I was on." "You thought wrong," he interrupted, voice turning sharp. "This is a business, not a democracy. Get to the kitchen." Behind Bryce, Nico caught her eye, subtle, somber understanding in his gaze. This wasn't random. They wanted her as far away from the floor as possible. But why? Could they know? The dish pit was its own kind of hell, steamy, cramped, loud. Within minutes, Elena's uniform was soaked, clinging to her like a shroud. Through the kitchen's swinging doors, she could catch fleeting glimpses of the dining room. Not enough to see clearly, just enough to feel blind. At exactly 7:45, Marcus entered. Elena recognized his tall frame and signature gray beard even from across the room. Carmen, the sweet hostess Trina usually ignored, walked him to table C7, just as requested. Perfect. But what unfolded next turned into a slow-motion nightmare. Trina ignored him. She made no eye contact, no greeting, no menus. Instead, she hovered over a sharply dressed man at table C3, someone taking photos of his entree with his phone. "She thinks that's the critic," Nico muttered, suddenly at Elena's side with a bin of dirty glasses. "He's not. He's a finance guy. Been here 3 times this month." Elena watched helplessly as Marcus sat untouched. No water. No menu. 5 minutes. Then 10, he checked his watch. Looked around. "Where's Carmen?" she asked, heart racing. Trina said it was an emergency. Sent her to the basement for inventory. 15 minutes. Marcus signaled twice. No one came. Elena watched Jake, timid and undertrained. Tried to help, only to be waved off. Elena could take no more. She ripped off her apron and stepped forward. But Bryce materialized in front of her, as if summoned by her fury. "Where do you think you're going?" "I want to help. You're paid to wash dishes, not think. Get back in there. There's a guest sitting for over 20 minutes with no service. And if you don't get back to your station," Bryce hissed, "that guest might just find himself escorted out instead." Elena froze. "You'd rather lose a customer than let me help?" "I'd rather protect this restaurant's image than let a half-trained nobody ruin it." His lips curled. "Go back, or go find another job." Trembling, Elena returned to the kitchen, but not before catching one final glimpse. Marcus rising slowly from his seat, not angry, just deeply, visibly disappointed. He approached the host stand, spoke calmly with Bryce, pointed toward the empty table. Elena couldn't hear the words, but she saw everything. Bryce smiled, acted confused, offered empty apologies. Marcus didn't stay to listen. He shook his head, turned, and walked out the door. The most powerful food critic in the city had just left her restaurant. Because of them. "This is madness," she whispered. She threw off the apron again, stormed out of the kitchen. Bryce's voice cracked like a whip. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Every head in the dining room turned. Staff froze mid-motion. Trina, halfway through pretending to cater to the wrong guest, spun around. "I just want to understand something," Elena said loudly, clearly, her voice steady as marble. "How does a restaurant ignore a customer for 25 minutes and still call that professional service?" Rice's face drained, then flushed red. "You're done here," he spat. "You're fired. Security's going to walk you out." No. That word rang out louder than she'd expected, and stronger. It wasn't defiance. It was clarity. It was truth. "I'm not done. I'm just beginning." She stepped forward. "I'm not Lena Martinez," she said, her voice ringing through the restaurant like a cathedral bell. "My name is Elena Cruz, and this restaurant, this place, belongs to me." Silence fell like a curtain. Elena could hear the faint ding of kitchen timers in the back. She watched Bryce's face contort, first confusion, then realization, then full-blown panic. Trina's lipstick looked garish under the lights she used to love. Her expression? Pure dread. "And we," Elena turned to Bryce, voice ironclad, "need to have a very serious conversation about everything that happened while I was gone." Table 6 started clapping, then table 12. Within seconds, the entire room rose in applause, not for drama, but for something they all understood had been missing: justice. Elena stood tall, not as a temp, not as a woman begging for scraps, but as the woman who built Estra Dorada. And now, the reckoning had come. Elena almost laughed. "Mr. Marison?" Patricia turned to Bryce, voice level but sharp as a gavel. "Do you have any comments on this recording?" Bryce sat frozen, like a deer caught in headlights. I wasn't aware of any of this. If Trina said those things, well, those were her personal opinions." "Really?" Elena pulled out a printed transcript. "Because the group chat says otherwise." She read it aloud, line by line. "Single mom sob story. Let's see how long she lasts." "Probably undocumented. They're always like this. Let's test her with the wine trick." Bryce's face went crimson. It was just locker room humor. "Racist locker room humor?" Elena's voice was ice. "About an employee you assumed was undocumented, with no evidence besides your own bias?" David Kim, seated beside Patricia, opened his laptop. "Let's move on to the financial review." The air thickened. Over the past 6 months, tip pool records revealed dozens of manual alterations, always in Trina's favor. Each week she had siphoned off hundreds of dollars. Worse still, Bryce had falsified overtime logs, stealing wages and trust. There must be some mistake," Bryce stammered. "The system auto-logs 47 edits to wage entries in the last 3 months, David said, not looking up. "All of them authorized under your user ID." Across the room, Nico sat in stunned silence. His sister had once worked here. She hadn't just been bullied, she'd been robbed. The total sum embezzled is approximately $18,000, 0 cents, David added. "This qualifies as felony-level fraud." Rice shot to his feet, face flushed with panic. "You can't do this. I have a reputation. I have contacts in this industry." "You had a reputation," Elena replied. "Now you have legal problems." Security escorted Bryce out of the room, his muttering incoherent as the door closed behind him. Trina, still sick at the spa, would be served papers soon enough. Elena turned back to the remaining staff, men and women, who had stayed quiet, not from cowardice, but from fear of retaliation. "I know. Many of you have been afraid to speak up," she said softly. "That ends today. There will now be an anonymous reporting system, mandatory management training, and a transparent tip distribution board updated daily." She turned to Nico, the one who lit the first match in the dark. "Nico," she said, voice steady, "if you're willing, I'd like to offer you the position of front-of-house assistant manager." The young man's face lit up like sunrise after a storm. "Yes, of course. Thank you." Elena scanned the room. Some still looked uncertain, others cautiously hopeful. "We're starting over," she declared. "Same food, same space, but this time with respect and fairness at our core. If you're willing to be part of that, I welcome you." Every hand in the room went up. 3 months later, Estrada Dorada hummed with a very different kind of energy. The golden walls still shimmered. The menu still told the story of Elena's grandmother through every dish. But now, the place held something far more precious, genuine warmth. In her real office, no longer occupied by someone else, Elena reviewed the weekly report. Customer satisfaction score, up from 3.2 to 4.7. Employee turnover, nearly 0. An anonymous feedback box, 0 complaints in 30 days. Knock at the door. A familiar voice. "Elena, I'm back." Marcus Webb, silver-bearded, gentle-eyed, stepped in. "You heard the rumors," Elena teased. "The rumor mill says Elena Cruz performed a miracle." She laughed. "Not a miracle, more like an exorcism." "Coffee?" she offered, already pouring. As he opened his leather notebook, he gave her a look. "You mind if I ask a few questions? This one's going in my next piece." "Ask away." He flipped a page. "What made you take a server's job in your own restaurant?" Elena paused, then answered honestly. "Desperation," she said. "I was getting complaints, but every time I showed up as the owner, the place transformed into this perfect little theater, like everyone was acting just for me." "And what did you discover?" "Even a little power, when left unchecked, can corrupt someone completely," she said, her voice low but firm. "I gave authority to the wrong people. I didn't supervise them, and they turned this place into their own little kingdom of cruelty." She paused again, this time longer. "But more than that, I failed as a leader. I chased reviews, profit, expansion, and forgot the most important ingredient, respect. You can have the best food in the world," she continued, "but if your team isn't treated with dignity, if your guests sense toxicity, if your culture rots from within, none of it matters." Through the window, she saw Nico showing 2 new hires how to set tables. At just 24, the once shy young man now moved with quiet authority. "And Nico?" Marcus asked, catching her glance. Elena smiled, eyes misty, not with sorrow but pride. "He saved me," she said. "He didn't owe me anything, but he chose to tell me the truth. When everyone else was silent, he stood up. Now he's a real leader. He leads by example, not by threats, and people respect him because he respects them." She chuckled. "Last week, one of our servers had an issue with childcare. Nico didn't penalize her. He rearranged the whole shift schedule so she could stay on." "That's leadership," Marcus nodded, scribbling in his notebook. "And Bryce?" "Trina." "Bryce pled guilty to wage theft. He's serving 18 months. Trina tried to fight it but was convicted of payroll fraud. She's doing court-mandated community service. and paying restitution to every employee she stole from. Her tone wasn't bitter, just final. But honestly, she added, I don't think about them anymore. My focus is on rebuilding, this time from the right foundation. Marcus grinned. I heard you're doing something rather unusual tonight. Elena winked. Guilty as charged. It's Friday night, busiest shift of the week, and I'm serving tables. Marcus arched a brow. The owner's waiting tables. Won't the guests be surprised? They already are, Elena smirked. Turns out people talk. Some guests now book because they hope I'll be their server. I do this once a month. Last month, I worked the prep line. Next month, dish pit. Marcus laughed. That's highly unconventional. Exactly, Elena said. It works. The team sees I'm not above anyone, and I get to witness the truth that the office will never show me. Right then, Nico popped in. Elena, your shift's starting. Carmen's got your apron ready. Perfect, she said, rising to shake Marcus' hand. Stay for dinner? She asked. I promise the service won't be like last time. He chuckled. I'd love to, but this time, I'm paying. 20 minutes later, Elena walked through the kitchen in full uniform, identical to every other staff member. No designer heels, no lipstick armor, just a clean pressed shirt, hair pulled back, name tag, Elena. The dining room buzzed. Energy vibrant, not frantic. Laughter, not stress. She took a table chart from Nico, heart beating not with fear but excitement, the kind she used to feel when she first opened the doors of her dream. Table 4 just sat, Carmen called out. They specifically requested, you. Me? Elena blinked. Bo grinned. Word spreads fast. Half our guests tonight asked if the owner would be serving. Elena approached table 4, a young couple celebrating their anniversary. Good evening, she said, setting down water glasses. Welcome to Estrada Dorada. I'm Elena, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. The woman looked up, eyes wide. Wait, are you really the owner? Elena smiled. Yes, but tonight I'm just your server, and I promise it'll be a dinner to remember. As she moved from table to table, taking orders, pouring wine, clearing plates, she felt something profound. Harmony. Nico coordinated with quiet strength. The new head chef led the kitchen like a symphony. Staff weren't competing. They were supporting each other. This is what I dreamed of when I opened this place, she thought. Not just a restaurant, a home. Not just meals, moments of meaning. Her dignity wasn't an extra, but the main course. At the end of the night, Elena removed her apron, stepping into the break room for a breath. She looked around the space that had once held fear and now held laughter. She had been the owner, then invisible, now the rebuilder. Every role ahead taught her something essential about the kind of leader she wanted to be. She knew Marcus's article would be published next week, but the most important review wasn't stars or headlines. It was Nico's confident smile as he locked the doors. His Carmen humming while cleaning the hose stand. It was the sound of laughter in the kitchen, where silence once screamed. Elena Cruz had learned the greatest lesson of her career. Leadership isn't power over people. It's power used for people. And sometimes, the best kind of leadership comes when you tie your apron on and start serving. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Moments of Quiet Truth, where we believe that the human spirit is never truly defeated, only waiting to rise.